I had my paper about women in society based off the curriculum and how it was constructed for a certain reason. So I began my paper talking about socialization because in order to understand society and how women are being oppressed, we need to understand how society is constructed. So I talk about the cycle of socialization. And the cycle basically constructs every general idea based off predetermined notions. So predetermined race, gender, norms, values, all of those things are without our control, basically. And it starts with a personal socialization. So that begins at the home with your family and friends, and they tell you values or norms that you should know, and you take what they say and you go off into a bigger institution, a bigger group of people, maybe a school or church, and they either reinforce what you already know or challenge your already determined norms and things like that. So for a person that might agree with what's going on, they just carry on their business. However, if someone decides to go against social norms, they can be looked at as violent or they can be looked at as an activist about a way to change a norm that should probably be altered for the greater good of the people. And institutions then look at your class, gender, race, ethnicity, and they divide us into privileged and the oppressed. And I go off in my paper and talk about how the two go hand in hand. So privilege is a special right or advantage given to a certain person or group, while oppression is the act of prolonged cruelty or unjust treatment. So I explain that privilege and oppression are an indirect relationship. So the more privilege you have, such as a white, higher class male, you will be less oppressed than an African American male, middle to low class, and vice versa. High oppressed black male will have lower privilege than a white male, higher class. And understanding that relationship is very important for this class because if you don't understand what each mean, you won't understand how women have gotten to the point where they are. And I also thought that the term ethnocentrism was very important because there are individuals who view their culture as superior over another, and that's why certain oppressions are not being resolved. And that is why we have so many inequalities within our society. I then go off and talk about how institutions reinforce the norms, oppression, and privilege. So it's very hard to step up in a social ladder when institutions or governments are reinforcing this idea that the white male is always superior, males are always superior than women, and it's very hard to change as one person to change a big stigma and idea like that. And so sorry, my nose itches. And institutions also validate privilege, and if someone from a lower scale is trying to challenge privilege that has been set since the 1900s, 1800s, it's very hard to alter a stigma like that. I then go off and talk about women specifically and how they relate to bigger institutions. So I first talk about women and medical fields and how either higher institutions such as government are trying to control women in terms of reproduction. I think that's two different things, and I think that's crossing a very clear boundary. So the government, such as Planned Parenthood, feels like, oh, we give tax money for this program, we should be able to control what women do with their bodies. I don't think that's true, and I feel like there's a certain boundary that shouldn't be crossed. So if a woman decides to have a baby on their own terms, there's still governmental power that has over that child, and that's just a little unfair. And then we have laws based off of governmental institutions saying, look, if you try to have an abortion, we're going to call that as illegal, and that's going to be put on you. However, in actuality, women are very important in terms of reproduction, and instead of the government trying to terrorize women and be this higher power of them, they should be providing them with better resources to have better care, to have the option to have prenatal screenings and things like that, so we have a better source of prolonged life. For example, instead of the government trying to control abortions and things like that when they don't really care about childcare or adoption, they could, provide tax money for tampons and things that women actually need, because in actuality, women have a higher standard of living than a male. They have to keep track of their reproduction rate. They have to keep track of their working parts, gynecologist-wise, and things like that. And even though they're trying to juggle all these things, the government is only consumed about what they're producing or what they're not producing. And that's why there's always going to be this social inequality. And I also go off and talk about how women are further going to be divided within work environments. So it doesn't matter how well a woman is qualified in her field. If there's a male that's trying to compete for the same position, he's probably going to get the job than she is. And that's basically based off the old stigma of males are breadwinners and women have to provide for the home and things like that. When it's 2019, you would think we're past that. But I basically talk about how within the workforce, there are people that still look at your gender and your class and things like that based off of old stigmas, when we could be working together and creating a stronger work environment. And I further go on my paper and just talk about how I relate myself to the current issues in terms of I'm a young female and I feel like I'm still going to be oppressed. I'm going to be looked at as less significant than a male only because of whatever has been determined already. And it's very difficult to change a current stigma or value this late in the game. So I felt like a way to change this system is to change general norms. However, in order to change a norm, we need to have someone that is already in the higher power establish that, oh, women are actually being treated unfairly. Here's what we gotta do. And they also have to understand that males are receiving privilege that they probably shouldn't receive for whatever reason. And I feel like once a higher power, maybe a male in government, can establish that I'm a male, I'm receiving too much privilege, women are still being treated unfairly, then we can either work together and create a general plan for how society should act in what we can view as normal. And I further talk about my paper, how my generation is on that step about crossing that boundaries of norm, because we have activists and we're accepting more different types of people, such as trans people. We're accepting different pronouns, and we're expanding this idea that it's beyond man, woman, that it's beyond him versus her, and things like that. And we're trying to create a general culture and understanding that in order to change a norm, we need to change our ideas about society and things like that. So that's basically what my paper is about.